This is UNLV Arts Worldwide, and we are here with our episode number 9. And we're here today with our Dean of the College of Fine Arts, Dean Nancy Uscher. Hi, Nancy.
Hi, Louis. I'm so excited about this episode because it's conversations about the arts. And we've talked several times during our series about making meaning. And I find it exciting that we're going to have conversations between our faculty and some of the leading arts journalists in our region to talk about, sharing perspectives about making meaning of the arts and bridging ideas and integrating thinking. How are you looking at this episode, Louis?
My 2 favorite things in the world are making art and then talking about art. And what I find is the conversing about art, how people meet, and the role of the critic, the role of the audience, each of those helps us shape what we see in a work of art. Don't you think?
I think you put it beautifully. I also think that our students are integrating communication skills with their art making during their college careers, undergraduates and graduate students. And I hope that we can model in this episode and in other episodes the importance of talking and thinking and communicating well about the arts in addition, as you say, in addition to art making, because it's really all part of art making in a certain sense.
So much meaning comes out of discussion, and students, their ability to garner words and ways of taking art and dissecting it and looking at it even through the different lenses, I find is just amazing.
I mean, it shows about living arts, really. We're making art, artists in the world, we're keeping the arts alive during this time, and we're talking about it, we're writing about it, we're thinking about it. And I just believe that's part of a wonderful education for our students. And of course, our faculty members are lifelong learners. You and I are as well. And we keep seeing things differently also as we grow as people, grow with years. And it's really exciting today in our episode to capture some of these ideas.
Well, Nancy, I can't wait to hear all the interviews today. And I also want to congratulate you because this idea of UNLV Arts Worldwide has garnered some real impact. It was just shared to me that we've had 1,600 really unique views, people watching our series, and people streaming it, and a bunch of new subscribers. So Nancy, I want to thank you again for this idea and this way for us to explore the arts, to collect the departments together, and to celebrate everything that the college is doing. So thank you, Nancy.
And Louis, thank you for your willingness to curate the series. And it really is about the team. I'm so happy to be part of it. And we do welcome our audience. And we say each episode, streaming from Las Vegas to the world, UNLV Arts Worldwide. Enjoy.
Enjoy.
Thank you guys for doing this. This is fun, I think. What was a time that you felt really moved to write? Not because you had an assignment or you had to write, but because you really felt like you had something particular to say. Ashley, do you want to attempt that one? Or you could pass.
No, I can attempt it. There hasn't been just one time. Actually, when it comes to my creative writing, it's been in moments where there's been, I've wanted to say something, but I need time to reflect on it, or I don't feel like it's the time or place to say it out loud. So I'll write it down. I'll write down what I wish I had said, or what I would like people to know. I shared a piece from actually a year or two ago, related to the same sorts of things that are happening right now. I think it was right after a Black grandmother had been shot in a parking lot. So I wrote a piece right after that. More recently, I wrote a piece right after my father-in-law passed away, and that was about 4 years to the day that my dad passed away. So I wrote a piece talking about the two of them, how they were similar but not similar. So that, it happens quite a bit. I kind of wish I wrote a bit more often, but yeah, there's definitely moments where I feel like writing is just the best way for me to communicate what's going on in my head.
And it just sort of bubbles up in you. Yeah. Yeah, that's the best. That's the best. How about for you, Scott?
I can think of two examples. Last year, on the Instagram page that I was following, I saw a painting by a guy whose name I no longer remember, and it was a painting of Las Vegas done in the 90s. And it was in this like hyper realistic illustrative style, and everything was crammed together, and it was about how the theme of it was about how the city is like depleting the natural resources, the water and all that, and with this heedless growth. But it was funny too, and so I ended up, for no reason at all, I tracked down the artist and talked to him, and just wrote out my thoughts. It's a small blurb, and then I actually ended up publishing that. But it was all this sort of sizzle of personal interest that I wanted to express when I saw that painting. The other thing would be, in October of 2016, I drove my mother to Colorado, where she was born, where I was born. She lived, and it's sort of been my fantasy place that someday I'll return to. But then when I got there in the sort of early run-up to the election, I felt sort of out of sync with it in a way I'd never had before. And so I ended up taking a lot of notes on that trip and, sort of pounding them into 5,000 words of wondering, what had gone out of sync between my fantasy idea of that place and the reality of that place. And that sits, entombed in my Google Docs, where it will never emerge from again. But it was what you say, that sort of insistent need to like get all the stuff that's whirling around in my head out into a coherent, blast of sentences.
Yeah, sometimes I feel like I should sit down and write the way that somebody sits down to eat, or the way that you sit down at your desk to do your job. But I think the things I've liked the best that I've written have really they've come as sort of a force, kind of out of me, almost inconveniently. I wanted to talk to, and we had talking about the time that we're living in now. And Ashley, you alluded to it with your comments. I think, Scott, you also alluded to it. I mean, what young people are experiencing at a place like UNLV is a world that looks drastically different environmentally as well. Where we are on Maryland Avenue in the Department of Art was a dirt road when some of the buildings were built that we're still working in, and now cars zoom down it. One of the things that I've done in the last couple really days, thinking about how to behave appropriately with the changes that are going on in the world, as I reached out to friends, of course, but I also reached out to the visiting artists who came and were guests in the Department of Art last year. To say, how are you doing? What are you experiencing? Is there anything that perhaps that you'd want to share with our students in the Department of Art? And when artist Anthony Hudson / Carla Rossi, who's a drag clown, got back to me, and they said that they had been invited to be the speaker at the virtual graduation for the Portland Northwest College of Art, and so they sent me the statement that they wrote, and I wanted to share that here, just sort of to get us going a little bit. I think it's also a remarkable piece of writing. And so Anthony / Carla wrote, "Do not believe anyone who tells you otherwise, anyone who calls art elective, impractical, or says that art cannot change the world. Trust in your fire. It is your voice. It is your art. Stoke it and foster it. use it. Speak up and act out. Act up. Scream. Break what the system tells you must be beautiful. Burn what the system tells you must be cheerful. Find beauty on your own terms. Uplift it and activate it and challenge it and sustain it. There's so much beauty in this world, and there's still so much to change in it. If we are to say that this is not precisely the job of the artist, then we are lying to ourselves. So maybe with that in mind, but maybe not too, what do you think sort of is or will become the art writing, the art reporting and critique and commentary in our time, or more specifically, even what's necessary in our time?
I think in terms of like form, which is how I tend to think, trying to first approach these things. I think of somebody like, I don't know, like Naila Orr from the Believer, and this piece she wrote about in the Believer about Twin Peaks and Las Vegas and the coronavirus, and the way that she, sort of hybridized a lot of different ideas into a coherent idea, a coherent stream of thought. And I think that is, for me, the model of the way to think through a time when we're being bombarded on all sides with these multiple cultural urgencies that we're experiencing now, political urgencies, people in peril, but also the same old things are always affecting us. We're bombarded by advertising, we're bombarded by messaging, and I think in a way that we weren't 10 or 15 years ago when I was really writing. And so to me, that way of writing, this hybridized approach where you use criticism and memoir and reporting and whatever tools you have, and you sort of break those boundaries that are normally applied to how you use these things. And I think that helps you think through the connections between these things that are happening, and large and small, and maybe you can start to connect, something that's happening here to something that's happening there. And as for my part, what I would probably do is put on my editor's hat and say, like, the middle-aged white guy's perspective is not missing from this dialogue. So maybe I need to go out as an editor and find people who are closer to the center of it, and that's the tact I would take.
Mm-hmm.
What I've been finding really interesting is just how quickly messages are being produced and sent out and spread throughout the world. I've been looking at Instagram quite a lot. I think Instagram and Twitter have been really really helpful ways for people to share their views, to share news, and to help people understand what's being fought for. And that's really been interesting from a design perspective, because you just have to think about what you want to say, who you're trying to reach, and put something together really quickly. It needs to be understood by a large group of people. So that's something that I think has evolved, not just with the current situations, but also over the span of, social media becoming more and more prevalent. So it's obviously related to writing. You do have to think about what you're including and how it'll be taken, but the messages tend to be more short and to the point.
Right. I was trying to post yesterday, one of our other visiting artists sent a poem, an artist named Tanea Winder, and I was trying to figure out how to post it on our department Instagram, and in the story, to post the poem and have what I thought would be a form that people would read, I had to break up the poem, a couple lines per screen in the story, and I don't know, I sort of closed it thinking, gosh, maybe this poem would seem like a relatively short poem on the page in Instagram. I don't know, is this going to work?
Yeah, that is the Instagram stories, and being able to post multiple images to one post has been something that I think more and more people are taking advantage of. And it's a way to increase engagement. And it's also a way of creating a narrative that might be more similar to how people read books and read text on a page. You can separate information so that, you know, there's a little bit left at the end of one screen, but then you swipe to the next one and then something else is revealed. So that is it's actually a really interesting way to present longer text. So maybe the poem wasn't a bad idea in that format after all.
I'm so delighted today on UNLV Arts Worldwide to welcome John Katsalmidas here with us to have a conversation about all arts in the world, all the things that are important to Las Vegas. And I wanted to start with a story about John, who I had the great privilege to meet shortly after I arrived 4 years ago. I felt that meeting John and then reading him very, very often in the Review Journal here in Las Vegas helped welcome me into the city. Here I was in Las Vegas, the new dean of the College of Fine Arts at UNLV, and Las Vegas has to be about the most famous city in the world, but I didn't know it. And I just want to say thank you, John, for welcoming me into the city as an artist and a person who so passionately wanted to see everything flourish and become part of the arts community. You have really welcomed all of us into this wonderful city, and you tell beautiful stories in your column. And I wanted to say thank you, and I wanted to ask you, first, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
And what are the challenges that you face? You have to be the hardest working or one of the very hardest working journalists I've ever met in my entire life. You are writing all the time. You're capturing such interesting stories and ideas for your readers. What are your challenges?
Well, first, Nancy, thank you back at you for your passion for our city and your involvement in the community and for your friendship. It's been a delight knowing you and getting to know you. So I'm returning the gratitude and the thank you there, first of all. The biggest challenge for me is probably trying to keep up with it all. You know, when Las Vegas is going on all cylinders, it's a challenge to keep up with all of it and keep everything in order. You know, because we have such a, as you know, a fertile and vibrant arts and entertainment community. There are a lot of stories out there. There are a lot of great performers, great artists. There's a lot of great talent. There are a lot of passionate performers, and to find them and keep up with them it's a challenge, but it's one I'm happy to accept.
What are some of the great opportunities you've had meeting these people, figuring out what has been important to them in their opportunity to be entertainers here in Las Vegas. What are some of the highlights for you?
Oh man, I think as I look at it right now, it's a very daunting question, because there's been so much that I've been grateful to be exposed to, and I think that I will say that as we're in this period right now, I think my affiliation with my history with the Smith Center is something I'm very proud of. I've known Myron Martin for a long time, the president over there, and I was there I saw the blueprints, I was there at the groundbreaking, the ribbon cutting, the first night, and many, many other nights. We went there together to see the composers showcase and the cabaret jazz. I think that that's one area that I felt I've helped make a difference in drawing attention to what they do at the Smith Center. That's a community venue. It's a community arts center. It's a neutral court, neutral field. It's not affiliated directly with any hotel, casino, and also being involved in the UNLV Performing Arts Center. Even before that, has been a great deal of fun. I will say that I've had a wonderful affiliation with the artists and your department at that level, and I've gotten to know some people who are legendary, some artists and entertainers who are world famous. I was very close to Jerry Lewis, in the last 15 years of his life. I'm still very good friends with Wayne Newton. I just saw him the other day. Donnie and Marie Osmond. I just went on a bike ride the other day with Billy Gibbons of ZZ Top. We could drill down into this a long way, but I've gotten to know most Siegfried and Roy. I just wrote about Roy Horn's death. I've been tight with them over the years. I just look at the people who've made a difference in this city. Penn and Teller, Carrot Top, Matt King, Lance Burton. I've gotten to know David Copperfield, fairly recently. These are people who are, many of them affiliated with your Hall of Fame. And I've gotten to know about, what they all share is a passion for creating new art in Las Vegas somehow. And I love telling those stories. I really, really love telling those stories. It's been a blast.
You tell them so well, John. And I think you really bring people together in a beautiful way. Thank you for that. We're living in some exciting and challenging times right now. Mm. And I wonder if you'd like to talk a little bit about some of your own recent experiences in these times. I know you've written some things about this time of pandemic, this time of people marching together for a better world. I'm curious about that, and I'm curious about what you see as our future. You do write about it very eloquently, and I know that you're very I believe you're very optimistic, as am I, about everything coming back in some appropriate, safe way as life happens, if I may say. But what are some of your thoughts as we wind down here about right now? And about reflections about the future of Las Vegas.
Well, boy, you've hit. We're talking at a time when there's a confluence of major events happening in our city. As far as the return to normalcy, whatever that's going to be like, I am confident that Las Vegas has the ingenuity, the work ethic, the vision, the imagination, and the architecture, the infrastructure to return. We're built to convene. We're built to coalesce, commiserate, and entertain, and give people a unique experience in the city. That will not change. It's just going to take a while to get back to where we were before this all started. We're getting there now. That I think we have to be mindful of, that the resorts and restaurants and all the public places in Las Vegas that we know and love have done everything that they can to keep us safe. I've noticed that already. What we have to do as individuals is make sure that we follow through and keep ourselves safe with each other. That's a very different kind of responsibility. It's a personal responsibility, and I'm reminding people that in my column and in person. If you're in a public place, man, if you think you're going to be at risk of infecting or being infected, mask up, please, because we'll be back faster if you do that. That's my message. But I've been out I'm telling you, the lounges are coming back. I'm hearing about, some other small entertainment here and there in restaurants and in bars that it's percolating up. The Fremont Street Experience, I just heard just right before I came with you, they're going to start returning music, live music to their promenade. And it's happening at a time when we're making a statement, as you said, in terms of demonstrating, in favor of equal justice. And I've been involved in that too. Covering it, and I got caught up in the demonstration here in downtown Las Vegas, where I live, a week ago Saturday, and was involved very directly in that. And we have things that are going on simultaneously that all involve passion. It all involves passion, and I just hope that we can get to a point where we can all be around each other and moving in the right direction, in a safe direction, before too long. And I think we will. I think we've got so much going on. We've got, we have a lot of planning for the future in this city right now. We have a major sports team and a stadium. We have the Sphere that it isn't even finished yet on the Strip, at the Venetian. That's going to be 18,000 seats of entertainment itself. We're a world-class city, and we just have to remind each other to make sure that we are sending the message of being safe and that we are ready to welcome people, because once we get there, we'll be back to normal.
That's beautiful, John. I always have felt since I arrived that this is a city of great innovation and invention. And it's been underscored by your words when I read your columns, and when you and I have spoken about many aspects of Las Vegas. I believe that there'll be some really interesting innovation and invention as a result of this time. Do you think so too?
Yeah, I think so. I think we're seeing it now. I think there's a lot of positive and incidental consequence to what we've been through. One is just preparing venues to be clean and pristine. I think we've been reminded of that. I was walking through the Bellagio the other day. I was walking through Las Vegas too, downtown. These venues, these resorts, and they were so clean, Nancy, that I almost felt guilty being inside of them. I was walking through the Bellagio, and my feet came out from under me because the floors were so clean that I almost lost my footing. I think that's a good thing. And I think that there's a lot of ideas for how to generate partnerships, creative partnerships. A lot of what I have an idea for what's happening on near campus to blend the Santa Fe and the Fat City Horn Show in some formal way with the jazz study program.
Wow.
I would like to see that happen and remind people of all the ways that our artists can touch each other through this, as we come out of this. And as you know, the Santa Fe band is loaded with your alumni.
We're so proud, and of course, I had the great honor of going with you to hear them.
Yeah,
and have loved our time together, John. Thank you.
So that's something we have to. We've had a chance to step back and look at the landscape a little bit, and remind people of how we all can work together. And I think that's happened. That happened as a result of everything going dark at the same time, and having a chance to stop and really look at our city from a different vantage point.
John, I appreciate your ideas about partnership and about working together. And I look forward to our next conversation, maybe even in person.
Yeah.
Let's do that. 6 feet apart, of course.
Yeah.
and look forward to learning from you and working with you. And as you say, enjoying our friendship and our colleagueship. I want to thank you so much for your willingness to be on our program today on this episode. It really illuminated so much about what a conversation in the arts means. Thank you so much, John.
Anytime, Nancy. Anytime you need me, I'm here.
Hello to everyone, and a special hello to you, Christopher Lawrence from the Las Vegas Review-Journal. My name is Heather Addison, and I am the chair of the UNLV Film Department. So we're very happy to be here today and be having this conversation. Thank you very much for joining us. I don't know if there's a way that you'd like to start in your role as critic at the Las Vegas Review-Journal, if you have a sense of like what your responsibility is as you cover motion pictures.
Basically, it's kind of difficult lately to really do that because you've got these big tentpole movies that everybody wants to read about, these big Marvel movies, these big sequels. That's what everybody wants to read about. That's what drives traffic to the website. But it's not like anything I say is going to make somebody want to not see Avengers Endgame. It's like you're just telling people more reasons to get excited about some big movie rather than being able to necessarily direct them to smaller movies.
I really think that we're still in the ground floor of what cinema is and can be. We're really still at the birth of cinema. It's only been around for 125 years. If you compare that to literature and theater, I mean, we tell our students, you're in at the birth of cinema. What this medium can be is really up to you and your generation. So I think it's very exciting, particularly now when we see like the political power that cinema and video can have. I mean, without those images of George Floyd, without that footage of George Floyd, I don't know that we'd be where we are with this movement and its great power. So I want to thank the people who document, not only reality, but also then take some of those documents and create fictional stories that also contain essential human truths.
Oh, absolutely. And then just to bring it around to your initial question about responsibility.
Oh yes, my initial question. I forgot.
of the media. I mean, there's so much media right now. So many streaming services, so many things popping up on YouTube, so many important things that people should see that honestly, it's more important than ever for those of us in the media to be able to spotlight some of these things because, like I said, so many people just heard about HBO Max when they pulled Gone with the Wind for a little bit. They didn't even know HBO Max existed despite like $100 million marketing effort or whatever it was. But to be able to kind of pick and choose and find things that are worth your time when people are just being assaulted with so many movies and television shows and just so much media that it can make your head spin. For people to be there and be able to say, you need to watch this. You need to see this, step back, take some time, watch this, and then go back to watching Tiger King or whatever nonsense you're watching. I mean, that's some of the most important things that, from a media standpoint, that we can do. And to show sort of better representational movies like that you don't have to go searching for. You don't have to dig around and to stumble across movies like Moonlight or Fruitvale Station, things like that can really, I admit I didn't know who Oscar Grant was until Fruitvale Station came out. And then watching that and what Ryan Coogler and what Michael B. Jordan were able to do to that, I mean, that movie still sticks with me. It's not a fun movie by any means. It's an important movie that launched two of the better careers in Hollywood right now.
Well, I mean, certainly at UNLV Film, we embrace, the spirit of the Black Lives Matter movement, and we want to encourage all voices. We have a very diverse university, and we want to figure out ways that we can help people tell their stories. And I think representation is so critical. And also for those of us who are working to educate students and maybe to reach out to the public in terms of film reviews, to kind of be partners, be good partners to this movement so that we can be part of the solution. And I never want to, as an individual, like unintentionally do something that might be, misconstrued or might not be supportive. And I think sometimes we can have those blind spots, and people watching Gone with the Wind might have those kinds of blind spots as they're watching the film. And I think that's what HBO Max is trying to do, is remove those blind spots so that we can all go into this with sincerity and with our eyes open, and really just encourage everyone to have a voice. How do we in the arts engage and encourage the public's trust? I think one of the first ways is with truth. Being willing to look at difficult truths. In the field of education, we have to constantly challenge ourselves, because it would be very easy to kind of let students glide through and not have them encounter moments of discomfort around content, for example, that they might not understand. Whatever their perspective might be. So we always want to look at it in an intellectually responsible way, whether it's stuff that's already made that we're screening or stuff that we are creating here in the Department of Film. So we challenge ourselves to go beyond our comfort zone, but in a way that's civil and respectful for everyone. At least that's our ideal. That's what we're working toward.
Right. And part of it is, film, not movies necessarily, but film should make people uncomfortable from time to time. And it should shake things up. If it doesn't so much now, when the corporate releases and everything has to be a recognizable brand and things like that, but you get the smaller movies, things that show up at Sundance, that sort of a thing. Those movies have impact that is far beyond the box office. They changed the way people think. They changed the way people look at the world.
It's a good point. I think it's a both and situation. We don't want to discard things from the past, but we want to enrich our understanding of what's there, and even looking to the past and finding things that we haven't paid attention to yet, while embracing what's new in our contemporary moment and the future. So I think that's part of the trust that we have as a Department of Film, that you of course have as a film critic, working for a major metropolitan paper. It's a struggle, but it's an essential struggle. And I think we're engaged in that struggle and will continue to be engaged. And I really respect our faculty, because they are constantly pushing us to embrace not only the past, but also the present and the future, widely understood. And we know that we have limitations as people. So because we're all limited by our individual perspectives, but to the extent that it's possible, we're continually questioning ourselves. That's part of the academic enterprise, is that you have to be open to challenging not only yourself, but also the discipline. The discipline will be reinvented, redefined as these new voices contribute to what it means.
All right. And this is UNLV Arts Worldwide. And with us today, we have Leslie Ventura from Las Vegas Weekly. Hi there.
Hi, how's it going?
Good. Thanks for being with us on this episode and kind of going down, the subject of, covering the arts and the responsibility that we have. As artists, as journalists and communicators, right? We've known each other for quite some time, and I've read a lot of your work. And would you say arts are your beat?
I would say entertainment is my beat. So arts and entertainment, obviously it falls into that. But I would not say that arts are my beats overall. I don't consider myself an expert in the arts here. But anything that is entertaining, I take interest in. So,
which a lot of that is, what do you think? Performance art? Not performance art, but the performing arts rather?
It's not a loaded question, but it's kind of hard to answer just because I got my start writing about music. So that's still by and large where so much of my focus is in. But, I've been at the Weekly now for 7 years. And in that time, we've just kind of adjusted everything. And so now I just cover everything. And that includes, you know, performance art, and that includes fine art and kind of everything in between. And so,
Well,
yeah.
and you went to UNLV, right? So
I went to UNLV, yeah.
What was your major, and how do you think that shaped your career?
So my major was women's studies, but that actually doesn't exist anymore. It's now called gender studies. I think it's gender and sexuality studies. And that really shaped my career. It's kind of twofold. That really shaped my career. And then also I was the art and entertainment editor of what was formerly known as the Rebel Yell, now the Scarlet and Gray Free Press. So that's like how I got into journalism. But women's studies or gender studies shaped everything that I do. In so much as it gave me a reference for like critical race theory, intersectionality, and media literacy, and kind of going into my field with a different lens than, you know, the average reporter or, you know, the white male reporter. That I kind of had a duty to share stories that extended beyond what we were used to reading about.
Nice. Now I have a quote here. I'm going to read this to you and then see what you think. So, poet Anne Louderback on why we make art and how art makes us says, "Meaning occurs in the mind and heart of the person who reads the poem, studies the picture, listens to the sonata." So do you imagine making meaning when writing or reporting on culture in our city?
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting question. So, okay, there's kind of like two ideologies when reporting. And the first one being, you know, we're not supposed to obviously be biased at all, and it's supposed to be objective. Because I don't do a lot of just hard news reporting, I think I am able to get a little bit more creative and share a bit more of a story or you know, what have you. And then there's the other side of things, like I said, with my studies at UNLV, where, you know, things don't happen in a vacuum, and everything is intersectional. Everything has, you know, multiple stories and storylines happening at once. And it's my job to make sense of that and tell that story. So in thinking of, you know, creating meaning, it's not my job to put my meaning into something. It's my job to kind of extract the artist's meaning and tell that story as best as I can.
Nice. So what do you look for when covering art? Because I'm assuming it's not all just, you know, things handed to you by an editor, right?
Definitely. When I'm covering art, again, it's a little tricky because I didn't study art. I like I said, I don't consider myself an art expert, but I have an interest in art, and I have a platform where I'm a writer and I write about entertainment. I happen to be very lucky, and my friend group are some of the most amazing artists that I know and some of the most talented people that I know. So I happen to hear about a lot of stuff going on just because I'm kind of tangentially in that world. And when I am looking for stories, I'm looking for things that, you know, aren't always represented in mainstream media, for one. Artists that I think need to have a spotlight shed on them. You know, at the same time, I don't want to act like you know, it's not like I'm sitting here discovering artists. If something speaks to me, and it's been written about before, I will still write about it because I think it's deserving of our attention. And obviously, you know, Black people, people of color, queer people, LGBT people in Las Vegas, I think I definitely try to focus on, I'm sorry, what?
Put a spotlight on.
Yeah, just to uplift and spotlight voices that might not be represented elsewhere. Although I do think, you know, our community does a good job with trying to, you know, showcase a little bit of everyone. It's hard to do. So that's something that I consider when I'm looking for stories, for sure.
Matt, that's a pretty good segue. The other thing that I wanted to ask you, so you wrote an article about the Axis Mundo Queer Networks in Chicano, LA exhibition at the Marjorie Barrick Museum of Art. You were able to speak to the curators, you know, about the exhibition, and then later on, I don't know if you know this, they told the museum that your piece was spot on. So, you know, concerning LGBTQ plus issues, you know, Me Too movement, indigenous issues, Black Lives Matter, in general, not necessarily concerning you, but what do you think is the responsibility of journalists covering these topics, whether it's the arts or any other segment?
Sure. I think it's the responsibility of everybody because this is our world right now. These are our current events. These are real issues that are happening every single day. And to turn a blind eye to that and cover, you know, anything else besides that just seems disingenuous. And, you know, I think it's our duty to keep these discussions going. We can use the Black Lives Matter movement right now as an example. You know, after George Floyd's murder, we saw protests all over the United States and the world, and there's still protests happening. But it's important to not let that die down. And so in terms of being a reporter, that's where that job is critical, because any of us could go back to writing about XYZ. But in pitching stories, and, you know, we're going to write about other things because, like you said, you know, we don't always have control over what we're writing. But in pitching stories, it is absolutely like paramount that we keep the camera on, you know, what's important. And so in this instance, you know, Black Lives Matter, how can we continue to write stories that center Black voices, that center POC, that center queer people? And so
when you're pitching those stories, you know, with your editors, with your, you know, publisher, do you feel that they're generally on board with what you're pitching?
I do. I feel like, okay, well, first of all, I wouldn't be somewhere for 7 years if I felt like, you know, I wasn't able to fully cover and express the things that I want to. And part of what I have been so fortunate at, you know, with the Weekly is when I have something I feel passionate about, I'm 99% of the time able to write about it, and I'm not censored. You know, I've written about protests. I've written about, you know, the adult entertainment industry. I've written about, you know, all sorts of things that don't fall in the category of art, but are, again, things that I'm passionate about, things that I think are worth knowing. And yeah, like, there are some things that have been considered risque or, you know, just intense, but like, it's important. It's important to be passionate about things. And that kind of goes back to, again, my original statement about women's studies or gender studies shaped so much of what I do. And I didn't have formal journalism training. And so I approach things differently. You know, I will be objective when telling a story, but when I'm picking the stories to tell, 100% my framework goes into that, you know. So I don't know if I answered your question.
No, you
but...
definitely did. You definitely did. So again, I just want to thank you for spending some time and being a part of this episode.
Thank
you on behalf of the College of Fine Arts for always shining a light on everything we're doing with the students and faculty, and everything you do for the music industry in this town. We really, really appreciate it.
Thank you. And same to you. You know, I appreciate what you guys do so much. So thank you.
Okay, bye.
Cool. Bye.